Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Susanna Wong, Senior Manager of the Market Outreach Division at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. On behalf of the Alliance for Green Commercial Banks, I'm very pleased to welcome you all to join today's roundtable session. Green Finance for Low Carbon Technologies, Clean Hydrogen and Carbon Capture, Utilization and Storage, jointly organized by the Alliance and Bank of China, Hong Kong. In this session, real sector players, industry experts, and researchers will discuss and share the latest technological development of clean hydrogen and CCUS, best practices, and real case applications. To kick off the session, let me pass the stage to Bank of China, Hong Kong. We are glad to have Ms. Lu Ying, General Manager, Global Corporate Banking Department, Bank of China, Hong Kong, to deliver opening remarks. The discussion will be moderated by Ms. Winnie Fan, Managing Director of Sustainable Finance and Deputy General Manager of Global Corporate Banking Department, Bank of China, Hong Kong.
大家下午好，我是中银香港环球企业金融部的总经理卢莹，欢迎各位参加由香港金管局、国际金融公司以及中银香港共同主办的金融助力绿色转型。聚焦低碳科技创新的论坛，很高兴为本次的论坛致开幕词。我们在9月8日已经完成了氢能与碳捕捉、储存、利用技术的专业培训，由咨询公司和行业专家对氢能产业链、氢能应用的案例以及碳捕捉、储存技术的介绍和应用进行了知识分享，希望大家都有所收获。为达到巴黎协议中设定的全球温控目标，绿色能源转型成为未来的重点发展趋势，而氢能和碳捕捉、储存技术是达成这些目标的重要手段之一。金融业作为推动低碳转型的主力军，需要通过深耕客户需求，提供不同的绿色金融解决方案，携手客户共同迈进碳中和目标。而中银香港作为本地主流银行，对社会的可持续发展责无旁贷。在推动能源转型方面，我们通过绿色金融协助能源企业客户布局新能源产业，加快产业升级的步伐，并通过转型金融配合能源企业客户的升级改造，迈向低碳经济。今天是我们论坛的第2场。我们在对氢能以及碳捕捉、储存技术有了一定了解的基础上，我们邀请了行业专家、金融机构以及政策方面的专家共聚一堂，从行业未来发展趋势、机遇与挑战、政策支持以及金融机构如何为能源转型和技术创新提供支持等多维度，对氢能以及碳捕捉、储存技术的发展前景进行深入探讨。再次感谢各位的参与，希望本次的圆桌会议能给您带来启发，让我们携手共进，共同应对低碳转型下的机遇与挑战，推动碳中和目标早日实现。谢谢。
Thank you very much, Ms. Lu, for your opening remarks. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Winnie Fan. I'm the Managing Director of Sustainable Finance in Corporate Banking and Deputy GM of Global Corporate Banking Department at Bank of China, Hong Kong. Echoing with Ms. Lu's remarks, it is an honor for Bank of China, Hong Kong to co-host a roundtable on such a pertinent topic. And it is my pleasure to be the moderator for today's discussion. From the training on the 8th of September, we had an overview on the technology of the green hydrogen and CCUS, followed by some case studies. And today, we are lucky to have leading energy business leaders, research and policy experts, and financial industry experts to further discuss the green technology investment initiatives and the outlook of scaling those technologies. Please let me welcome and introduce our esteemed panelists. From the energy sector, we have Mr. Peter Deneve, who is the head of origination, business development, and customer engagement from Hydrogen Asia BP. BP aims to build a leading position as an integrated low-carbon hydrogen provider, capturing at least 10% of key markets at 2030. We also have Mr. Li Haitao, who is the CCUS expert from Sinopec Nanjing Chemical Industry Company. Sinopec has taken a leadership role in China's development of CCUS and has just completed China's first megaton CCUS project. We are thrilled to hear from the industry experts on this topic. From Bank of China Group Investment, we have Dr. Huang Tao, who is the General Manager of Consumer and FIG Investment Division at Bank of China Group Investment. BOC Group Investment is a major platform for the direct investment business of BOC. They have invested in a great number of large projects in Hong Kong, Macau, mainland China, and overseas, covering sectors in energy, real estate, transportation, etc. Last but not least, we have Dr. Liang Xi, who is the Professor of Sustainable Transitions in Construction and Infrastructure at University College London's Bartlett School of Sustainable Constructions. Besides his academic and research responsibilities, Dr. Liang is a leading expert in deploying many CCUS projects in China. Dr. Liang is Deputy Director for China's CCUS Committee within the Chinese Society for Environmental Science. He is also Secretary General of UK-China Guangdong CCUS Center. In terms of the flow for today's roundtable, we will have 2 rounds of discussions. Hopefully, we will have some time for Q&A at the end. We have collected some questions during the registration process, and we can also try to answer some questions coming in from the chat. From the training earlier, one of my takeaways is that clean hydrogen and CCUS plays an important role in the energy transition as governments around the world set ambitious targets to decarbonize in an effort to meet climate goals. To further explore the opportunities in clean hydrogen and CCUS, in our first round discussion, I would like to focus on the investment initiative in these technologies. Peter, thanks for joining us today. Clean hydrogen has been gaining attention because of the tremendous potential for reducing carbon emission. May I please invite you to kickstart the panel discussion by sharing with us the opportunities hydrogen presents for clean energy alternatives and the role it is likely to play in energy transition? BP sees hydrogen as one of the transition growth engines. Could you please share with us BP's strategy in hydrogen?
Thanks, Winnie. Sure. Happy to take that question. So at BP, we believe that low carbon hydrogen has a really critical role to play in achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. We see low carbon hydrogen as an essential complement to the ongoing electrification of the global energy systems, with in fact a key role to play in the hard to abate transport and industrial sectors. So you're probably aware that hydrogen can provide extremely high temperatures when burned, up to 950 degrees Celsius, which is actually necessary for industrial processes such as iron that current electric heating technology cannot reach. So at BP, we believe that all forms of low carbon hydrogen are needed, whether it's green or blue or pink or other colors, and it's in fact local conditions that will dictate how it is best produced. So for example, that means if you have countries where there is access to renewable resources, abundant renewable resources, that will really spur green hydrogen, while the availability of low-cost natural gas and the proximity of CO2 storage will of course support the production of blue hydrogen. If you focus on green hydrogen, it's really the cost of the electrolysis, the equipment, and of course the cost of renewable energy, which are key, while blue hydrogen is influenced by the natural gas prices, as well as the cost of capturing and storing the carbon emissions underground. So as BP, we are committed to bringing low carbon hydrogen to the world. Again, it will be critical to the transition. While the industrial and commercial use of hydrogen energy is still in its early days, its potential for decarbonizing industry and mobility on a global scale is simply huge. So we see a substantial acceleration of the emergence of the hydrogen economy today. In fact, according to our own BP's 2022 energy outlook, hydrogen is projected to provide up to 8% of the total final energy consumption by 2050. That is in the net zero scenario. And if you include hydrogen used to produce synthetic fuels, which is the likes of sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel, as well as power production, that total demand nearly doubles. So within that overall market, at BP, our aim is to secure a 10% market share of the low carbon hydrogen markets in certain selected key geographies, and that by 2030, which is literally around the corner. So at BP, in terms of market segments, we're focusing on industry, power production, and heavy duty transport. And then in terms of our global hydrogen hub project pipeline, it spans across the UK, which of course our home market, the US, Middle East, EU, and of course here, ASPAC.
Thank you, Peter. We understand there is a substantial acceleration of the emergence of the hydrogen economy. Now moving to Dr. Huang. From the direct investments perspective, how would you describe recent investment activity into hydrogen energy projects? What factors are driving the investments? Could you please share with us any investment initiatives of Bank of China Group investment in hydrogen?
Thank you for having me, Ms. Fan. Indeed, hydrogen power is seeing unprecedented momentum across the world. The Hydrogen Council expects hydrogen to attract investments amounting to $500 billion by 2030 and become a $2.5 trillion market by 2050. Hydrogen is also taking off in China as the world's largest producer and the largest buyer of new electrolyzers. Over 100 listed companies are chipping in, with over 300 billion RMB invested. In my opinion, there might be several major drivers for recent investment. Firstly, the Chinese government is striving to reach the carbon peak and carbon neutrality. The goals highlight hydrogen as a promising way of decarbonization without compromising energy security. Secondly, China has the foundation to build a hydrogen value chain. For example, the supply could be supported by our renewable energy resources. The demand would be brought by various potential applications in a massive market, and the transmission could be facilitated by infrastructure development. Thirdly, hydrogen fuel cell solutions have been polished in various use cases over many years and may become more economically viable than diesel in heavy trucks as early as 2025. Regarding our company, Bank of China Group investment has followed this sector since 2018, especially focusing on application and supply chain innovation. In 2021, we became a shareholder of Refile. The Chinese name is Shanghai Chongsu Jituan, which is China's leading fuel cell solution provider. Then in 2022, we introduced Refile to Konglong Motor Bus in Hong Kong in the context of supporting Hong Kong's transition to green energy. Today, we are glad to see that they have engaged in deep dialogues on using hydrogen power in Hong Kong's bus line in future. We also invested in Sinopec's distribution and retail network, which operates one of the largest logistics infrastructure, and 30,000 gas stations across the country. As China embraces energy transition, this network will become critical infrastructure and a direct interface with consumers. I think it will play an important role in the transmission and distribution of hydrogen. In fact, earlier this month, Sinopec announced its strategy to become China's #1 and the world's leading hydrogen power company, focusing on transportation and green hydrogen production. Sinopec already operates 83 hydrogen stations today, which is the largest network in the world, and plans to build over 300 by 2025, bringing total capacity to 120,000 tons. Ms. Fan.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. We see hydrogen's rise in capital market and from Bank of China Group investments perspective. The investments are more focused on the application of hydrogen in the value chain. Now let's move to the other green technology, CCUS. I'm very excited to have Mr. Li from Sinopec with us. Sinopec's Qilu petrochemical Shengli oilfield CCUS project is China's first million-ton CCUS project. And Sinopec has announced that it has started operations in August 2022. This is a CCUS whole value chain project. Could you please briefly introduce the technical highlights in the various stages along the value chain? Carbon capture, transmission, utilization, and storage. Could you share the expected impact of emission reduction, as well as any long-term plan for further developing this project? Let me repeat in Mandarin. 李先生，中石化的磁卤石化胜利油田 CCUS 专案为中国首个100万吨级的 CCUS 项目，并已于2022年8月宣布正式投产。这是一个 CCUS 全产业链的项目，请你简单介绍一下在碳捕集、传输、利用、封存这几个主要的环节的技术亮点。另外，可不可以分享一下这个专案预计的减排效果，以及长期的应用规划？
好，非常感谢对我们中国石化 CCUS 项目的关心。作为减碳固碳技术， CCUS 已成为多个国家碳中和行动计划的重要组成部分。多年来，中国石化持续进行科研攻关，推动我国 CCUS 产业发展。中石化的齐鲁石化胜利油田 CCUS 项目为中国首个100万吨级的 CCUS 项目，已于2021年7月开建，2022年1月29号全面建成中交，8月授校，该项目正式驻期运行。
Thank you for your interest in CCUS project of Sinopec. As a key carbon reduction technology, CCUS has become a vital part of carbon neutrality action plans in many countries. Over the years, Sinopec has been consistently conducting research and overcoming challenges to drive the development of CCUS in China. Sinopec's Qilu petrochemical and Shengli oilfield CCUS project is the first million-ton CCUS project in China. We started the construction in July 2021, completed on January 29, 2022, and started operations on August 29th.
碳捕集环节，中国石化采用了多项先进技术，流程先进可靠，能量利用率高，二氧化碳回收率高，更加节能，成本更低。回收后的液态二氧化碳纯度达到了99%以上，压缩、制冷、液化、精制单元以及配套工程实现了全部设备的国产化。
In the carbon capturing process, Sinopec has adopted a number of advanced technologies to ensure a reliable process, a higher energy utilization rate, and carbon dioxide capture rate, achieving more energy and cost efficiency. The captured carbon dioxide could be liquefied with a purity of 99%. Equipment for compression, refrigeration, liquefaction, as well as its ancillary parts are all manufactured domestically.
在输送环节，采用了陆上车辆的运输方式，送至生力田进行去油封存，采用了新能源专用运输车辆，开发了国内首套低温液态出罐、二氧化碳低温注入和测量系统，确保了安全可靠。
During transportation, trucks are used to send carbon dioxide to Shenli oil field for enhanced oil recovery and storage. In reconfiguring these vehicles, we have developed the country's first cryogenic liquid tank, low-temperature carbon dioxide injection technology, and its measurement system to ensure safety and reliability.
目前正在开展二氧化碳长距离超临界压力管束工作，开发了逆向注入设备，预计到今年年底，齐鲁石化至生力田的100公里二氧化碳输送管道投产，届时将在国内首次实现二氧化碳长距离超临界压力管束，真正做到制、输、用全过程全密闭。
We are currently building a long-distance supercritical pressure carbon dioxide transport pipeline and dense phase injection equipment. We plan to start using the 100-kilometer long distance pipeline to transport carbon dioxide from Qilu petrochemical to Shenli oil field. It will become the first carbon dioxide long-distance supercritical pressure pipeline in China, integrating capture, transportation, and utilization in one airtight process.
在碳利用与封存环节，中国石化拥有多项核心技术，科研人员通过技术攻关和现场应用，形成了特低渗透油藏二氧化碳混象区、中低渗透油藏二氧化碳气水交替区、气区数值模拟与动态监测、二氧化碳区化学增效、二氧化碳高压混象等二氧化碳区域封存油藏工程系列技术。
In the utilization and storage stages, Sinopec owns various core technologies. Through technical modification and on-site applications, scientific researchers have developed a series of technologies for enhanced oil recovery and storage reservoir engineering, such as carbon dioxide mixed phase driven in low permeability reservoirs, alternate carbon dioxide gas water driven in medium and low permeability reservoirs, numerical simulation and dynamic monitoring of gas-driven technology, chemical efficiency enhancement of carbon dioxide drive, and high-pressure carbon dioxide mixing and drive.
CCUS 项目要提高封存率和采收率，全过程密闭是核心。在注入端，针对液态二氧化碳一气化外排及多井同时注入剂量分配难度大的难题，生力田攻关研发全密闭高效注入技术，形成了具有完全自主知识产权的注入系列装备，破解了零排放、低温计量、分压分注等核心技术难题。
The key to guarantee storage and recovery rate of CCUS projects is to seal off carbon dioxide completely throughout the whole process. During injection, Shenli oil field has developed a fully airtight and highly efficient injection technology to prevent carbon dioxide gasification and leaking and to achieve gas injection from multiple sources, on which we have obtained independent intellectual property rights. Core technical challenges such as zero emission, cryogenic metering, partial pressure, and separate injection have been addressed.
在采出端，创新实施采出气液全程密闭基础与处理工艺，采出气分水后，直接增压回注进行2次去油与封存，确保油不落地、水不外排、气不上天。生力田形成了核心技术，并取得矿场应用的突破，已在20个区块累计注入二氧化碳64万吨，封存50多万吨，增油10多万吨。
During extraction, innovative technologies are applied, making sure ejected gas and liquid are transmitted and treated in a completely confined process. Ejected gas and water are directly pressurized and re-injected for secondary oil recovery and storage to ensure oil does not fall, water does not drain out, and gas does not emit. Shenli Oilfield has developed core technologies and achieved breakthroughs in mining application. It has injected a total of 640,000 tons of carbon dioxide into 20 blocks, stored more than 500,000 tons, and added oil by more than 100,000 tons.
作为国内最大 CCUS 全产业链示范基地和标杆工程，该项目每年可减排二氧化碳100多万吨，相当于支数近900万颗，对搭建人工碳循环模式具有重要意义，将为我国大规模开展 CCUS 项目建设提供丰富的工程实践经验和技术数据，有效助力我国实现双碳目标。
As China's largest CCUS food chain demonstration project, 1 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions can be reduced per year, which is equivalent to planting nearly 9 million trees, creating a man-made carbon cycle. It provides meaningful engineering experience and data for large-scale CCUS projects, driving to achieve China's carbon peaking and carbon neutrality goals.
李先生，感谢你对碳捕集与封存技术在石油行业应用的一个介绍。Thank you, Mr. Li, for your insights on CCUS technology highlights in oil and gas industry.
谢谢。
Dr. Liang, you are at the forefront of rolling out CCUS projects in China and worldwide. Besides these large-scale CCUS projects usually owned by energy companies, what is your observation on any other business models in CCUS deployment? What's your view on the potentials of these models?
Thanks for the question. That's a very good question. So at the earlier stage, it would be easier if a CCUS project covering carbon capture, transportation, maybe utilization and also storage is owned by one single entity. And then there will not be any major issue to sort it out between different components, because otherwise there will be so many contractual arrangements between capture, transport, and storage, and also who is responsible for long-term CO2 liability, who is benefiting from the selling of carbon credit if the carbon emission reduction through CCS is successful. So all these issues will be quite controversial and difficult if this if it's covering so many different entities. So, but in the long term, of course there are other business models. For example, I would believe in the future, transportation and the CO2 storage will, like operators, like currently electricity grid, they will be regulated operator. If any CO2 emission sources, they want to reduce carbon emissions through carbon capture, utilization, and storage, they need to pay a fee for transportation and pay a fee for CO2 storage to get rid of their CO2. And in fact, like in Norway, in Netherlands, and in UK, this model has been applied by large oil company or by the government to develop CO2 transportation and the storage infrastructure. In Norway, it's called the Northern Line project, which develops CO2 transport and the storage infrastructure for Norway, Sweden, and other countries to use infrastructure to put the CO2 in the pipeline, shipping, and for major CO2 storage site, and to reduce the carbon emission. So I think that in the longer term, there will be other model, and the most popular and visible one is to develop transport and storage as infrastructure, while capture plant and the emission sources pay for the service to get rid of their CO2. Having said that, there might still be a long way to go through, as I recently worked on the project to help a Chinese oil giant to work out how their refinery plant selling CO2 to how to set up the pricing for refinery selling the CO2 to oil production plant for enhanced oil recovery. So they want to work out a fair internal pricing mechanism. As you can see, even for one single firm is so difficult. So if it's multiple firms involved, how to harmonize and set up the contractual arrangement is a difficult task.
Thank you, Dr. Liang. So far, our panelists have shared with us the view on hydrogen and CCUS from industry perspective and investment perspective, with the introduction of some application cases as well. Now I would like to turn the topic to the second round of discussion. Green hydrogen and CCUS has a central role to helping the world reach net zero emission by 2050. However, due to the high cost and revenue uncertainty of this technology, green hydrogen and CCUS are still in the early stage of the commercialization. Therefore, let's discuss the outlook of scaling these green technologies and what kind of support the industry will need. Peter, as mentioned before, hydrogen has a big potential in the future for the energy transition. In order to scale up the hydrogen industry, what are the challenges for obtaining financial support from financial institutions and investors, and what needs to be done further?
Thank you, Winnie. So, as I mentioned before, so we do recognize the clear importance of hydrogen in reaching net zero and the contribution that it can bring to a low carbon energy system. It's a huge task ahead of us in the industry, and of course we need the involvement of the governments to help us kickstart this economy. So if you look at the EU, for example, there is a clear political commitment. You have the EU Green Deal, that's a 6 gigawatt target for renewable hydrogen production with electrolyzers, so green hydrogen by 2024. And actually, if you look at the situation today, globally, there are 31 countries that have released national hydrogen strategies. If you compare that to 2019, there were only 3. So that also shows that the need for global investment is huge. It's $2.5 trillion investment opportunity all the way to 2050. Now, focusing again on the role that government has to play or should be playing, we see the need for them to establish frameworks that provide confidence for us, the industry, on the environmental benefits of hydrogen. Again, looking at the EU, as you're probably aware, they've released the taxonomy for sustainable activities, and that really puts in place a uniform classification system for sustainable activities. And of course, sustainable hydrogen and the production and use of sustainable hydrogen is one of those activities. So all of that results in enhanced disclosure requirements, which will bring confidence to the investors, to the financiers, and thereby encouraging the reallocation of capital towards hydrogen and similar activities. Still on the government side, we do see the need for investable, bankable support mechanisms that will provide those revenue streams that we need to underpin these massive infrastructure projects. Again, quick example from the EU, there is REPowerEU strategy by the European Commission released, which supports the build-out of new energy infrastructure that will lead such a green transition. So they're developing legislations and framework for the uptake of hydrogen, and thus again, providing those revenue streams that will underpin these investments, which of course a key consideration when the financiers will bring these types of projects to their credit committees. Closer to home, or at least closer to ASPEC in Singapore, there is the Korea H2 Business Summit Fund, that is looking at investments from domestic South Korean member companies, but also foreign investors like ourselves to promote the hydrogen industry and really build out that whole value chain. So the Korean government is, for example, providing assistance in the form of interest rate cuts, regulatory support, and access to expertise by public energy institutions. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Peter. In terms of the financial support for green hydrogen, from our observation, the current funding is largely supported by government, university grants, and venture equities. In short, most projects are funded by equity instead of debt. For commercial banks, agree with Peter that more education will be necessary in this emerging market for lenders to become familiar with the technology and market, which is also one of today's objectives. Actually, the rise of ESG, sustainability, and climate change awareness has created a new source of financing for green ventures. Green bond is also a good choice at the early stage, as they may not be necessarily linked directly to off-taker revenues as project financing would be. They can be supported by the strength of the corporates underlying the hydrogen operation. We have seen some examples of green bonds to support the development of hydrogen in some countries, such as Plug Power Inc., a US hydrogen fuel cell provider. The company has launched a convertible bond, green bond offering to fund its hydrogen strategy in the US in May 2020. As mentioned earlier, hydrogen projects are most funded by private equity. Dr. Huang, going forward, what are your predictions for hydrogen investment activity through 2022 and beyond? What key factors are likely to shape transactions and investments in the years ahead?
Okay, thank you. We can see that in the past 2 years, over 130 transactions were announced in hydrogen, and investment funds have amounted to 90 billion RMB in AUM. In the first half of 2022, 10 significant deals totaling 13.6 billion RMB were announced in hydrogen fuel cell and its value chain. Apart from regular VC and PE firms, state-owned investors are increasingly active. Now, leading companies even started filing for IPO on the Sci-Tech Innovation Board. We expect hydrogen application to be mainly in transportation for now, but also power utility and industries in future. Companies will keep exploring more use cases and better efficiency, and local independence will remain a critical theme. The current investment focuses on the supply chain, including fuel cells and their key components. But in the long run, attention may move to the upstream power supply. We know that hydrogen power has a long and wide value chain, and the prosperity is still mainly driven by continuous policy support. However, the future of hydrogen should ultimately be based on economic viability. Therefore, the key driver should be technology improvement that translates into cost reduction and economic efficiency in production, storage, transport, and crucial components along the value chain. Ms. Fan.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. I agree that much has to be done to get the green technology off the ground. Now let's move to CCUS. Mr. Li, as large state-owned energy company, Sinopec's demonstrative projects in CCUS have been very meaningful for the energy low carbon transition. What is your vision for the more mature development and broader application of CCUS? If this vision is to be achieved, what kind of support do you think that energy companies would need from the government, financial institutions, and scientific research institutes?
李先生，作为国有大型能源企业，
中石化现阶段在 CCUS 领域的实战意义深远，对于能源产业转型具有非常重大的示范作用。你对 CCUS 更成熟的发展以及更为广阔的应用前景有什么展望呢？如果要达到这个愿景，作为能源企业，希望得到政府、金融机构、科研机构的哪一些支持呢？
这个问题非常好，我来简单回答一下。CCUS 技术是目前实现化石能源低碳化利用最可行的技术手段。根据我们国家生态环境部 CCUS 年度报告2021年的报告，2030到和2050年，全球 CCUS 减排需求分别为 16.7 亿吨和76亿吨，中国 CCUS 减排需求分别为 2.3 亿吨和 10.25 亿吨。CCUS 减排需求空间广阔。
This is a great question. CCUS is currently the most feasible technology to achieve low carbon application of fossil energy. According to CCUS Annual Report 2021 from China's Ministry of Ecology and Environment, in 2030 and 2050, the global demand for CCUS emission reduction is 1.67 billion tons and 7.6 billion tons respectively, while China needs to achieve 230 million tons and 1 billion tons respectively through CCUS. There is a large demand for using CCUS for emission reduction.
中国石化拥有 CCS 全产业链的技术基础，形成了高、中、低浓度二氧化碳补给工艺与装备技术，形成了较为完善的二氧化碳去油技术体系。在二氧化碳至碳酸乙烯酯、至甲醇、矿化磷石膏等化工利用方面取得了研发成果。
Sinopec has a solid technical foundation for building the full chain of CCUS, owning technologies and equipment in carbon capture for high, medium, and low concentration, and establishing a complete process for enhanced oil recovery. We have also made progress in chemical utilization of carbon dioxide, producing vinyl carbonate, methanol, and mineralized phosphogypsum.
中国石化具有天然的原汇匹配优势。中国石化集团下属企业可作为二氧化碳排放源，油田企业适合二氧化碳区域的常规油残出量大。基于上述两个因素，中国石化将会加快 CCUS 技术孵化及成果转化，实施成本领先战略，保障国家能源安全的同时，助力企业碳减排，推动石化产业绿色低碳转型发展，履行好国资委赋予中石化 CCUS 产业链链长的作用。
Sinopec Group has a natural advantage of utilizing carbon dioxide for enhanced oil recovery. Its subsidiaries can provide carbon dioxide emission sources, and fields have the large scale needed for applying EOR technology. Sinopec will take advantage of these two factors and use its overall cost leadership, accelerating the development of CCUS technology and its application. CCUS is not only essential for our national energy strategy, but also important for carbon emission reduction, driving green and low carbon transition for petrochemical industry, establishing Sinopec as the leader of CCUS industry, fulfilling our duty given by the government through state-owned asset supervision and administration commission.
在知识层面，我个人的意见国际层面应该积极参与，并深化 CCS 技术多边机制合作，加强技术联合研发与知识共享，牢牢把握 CCS 技术的发展前沿，掌握技术的先进性。
In terms of support, internationally we'll actively strengthen multilateral cooperation on CCUS technology development, increasing joint R&D efforts and knowledge sharing, and keeping up to date with the most cutting-edge CCUS technology.
中国政府层面应制定科学合理的涵盖 CCS 建设、 运营、监管及终止的制度法规，要制定推动 CCUS 示范项目产业化的发展政策，制定 CCUS 行业规范以及应用评价和标准体系，加强产业链协作机制研究，加大 CCUS 科技投入，支持 CCUS 关键核心技术的研发与应用，加快建立技术税收优惠和补贴类激励政策、碳排放配额、碳税、用能源指标、油厂取得机制，丰富碳交易品种和交易方式，拓宽碳交易的主体范围。
In terms of support from the Chinese government, we hope that a science-based regulatory framework could be established, regulating CCUS construction, operations, supervision, and termination in order to develop CCUS demonstrations to a wider scale. Rules and systems of evaluation and standards need to be put in place, and cross-chain collaboration mechanisms need to be reinforced. More investments need to be allocated to CCUS R&D to achieve more breakthroughs in core technologies. The government should also accelerate rolling out policies on providing subsidies and tax incentives on technology, implementing carbon emission quotas, carbon taxes, and paid access to energy use, enriching carbon trading types, methods, and scope of the emissions trading system.
金融机构应明确 CCUS 绿色金融的支持力度，拓宽融资渠道，集中资金对关键核心技术进行重点支持、重点突破。
From financial institutions, we hope to have clarification on the level of support to CCUS through green finance, widening financing channels, and focusing funding to achieve breakthroughs of core technologies.
以上是个人的一些不成熟建议，如有不当之处，请各位专家批评指正。
These are some of my personal viewpoints on your question.
谢谢李先生的分享。Thank you, Mr. Li.
Thank you. 谢谢。
In terms of the policy support for the CCUS mentioned in Mr. Li's speech, Dr. Liang, from your work as advisor to policymakers on developing CCUS, what are the key elements in setting up a regulatory framework that supports R&D, project deployment, and private investment? What are some of the best practices you have observed worldwide?
Thanks. This is an excellent question. So I think the regulatory framework for R&D or its incentive policy for R&D is already in place, and the Ministry of Science and Technology is in 12 5-year plans and the 13th 5-year plan. I think each 5-year plan already spent about 500 million yuan on carbon capture and storage, and encourage corporate, in particular state-owned enterprise. They put in a lot of money for CCUS, but compared to the United States and Europe, is still the numbers are still rather small. So for R&D side, I think it's critical to first to scale up the funding support for innovative technology, because CCUS is so important for China, because China really relying on coal and other fossil fuel sources for the primary energy supply. So the cost reduction for CCUS and technology development is quite important and critical. And secondly, for the R&D side, we need to see more venture capital to come into CCUS. And currently in the marketplace, many investors cannot distinguish which CCUS technology with carbon capture, in particular carbon utilization technology, will have a good prospect. For example, many CO2 conversion into products technology is very, very popular in the market, but in fact, the energy balance or the cost can really be difficult to work out. So we need to have fair and mechanism guided by the government to help the investment society to understand, oh, this is a better technology, or this technology has potential in 5 to 10 years. And in the West, I think interest in carbon capture and storage, R&D, is also increasing, and there are many venture capital put money in direct air capture, where we believe is very long-term and difficult, so still attract a lot of funding. For your second part of the question, I think is really critical and important to talk about CO2 regulation for larger scale deployment and larger scale demonstration. As you know, once the CO2 being stored, there will be long-term monitoring, and also someone will need to take responsibility if the CO2 is leaked. In the West, in Europe, in UK, and in different states of United States and in Canada, they have already set up the CO2 storage related regulatory framework. That will include a few elements, including who is owning the liability, when the liability meets satisfactory criteria can be transferred to government, like in Europe after 10 years. If everything is satisfied, then the CO2 storage monitoring liability will be transferred to the government regulatory body. And also, who is responsible to pay for monitoring, and how which kind of monitoring approach is being agreed. And importantly, at the operational stage, how to monitor the CO2 being stored and monitor CO2 leakage or seepage, and how to define CO2 being reduced and quantify the CO2 reduction. So all this regulatory framework is not yet in place in China, which will make in the future, even there is a 500 yuan per ton CO2 carbon price, will not be able to justify and finance CCUS project, because you don't have the officially approved approach to regulate the CO2 emission reduction from fossil fuel plant, and you don't have the approach to quantify what is the CO2 emission reduction through carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So this is really urgent to work out the regulatory frameworks to understand at each part of the life cycle, who is taking this responsibility, how to give permit to develop the projects, and how to quantify carbon emission reduction.
Thank you, Dr. Liang. We had a fantastic discussion on how to scale up the green technologies and the support needed from the financial institutions and policymakers. Thanks for the fantastic sharing from all the panelists. We have covered a lot on today's discussion. I'm sure our audience here have a lot of questions. With the time constraints in mind, we'll just take a few. Okay, this is a question. May I invite Peter to address this question? What is your prediction for the hydrogen development in Asia Pacific in the next 5 to 10 years?
Thanks, Winnie. Yeah, so there is really there is a lot of potential for sure in this region. That's also why at BP we are really putting in a lot of resources and focus on this particular region. There are a couple of big projects that we are developing, including in Australia. Now, with all of this potential, there's also a significant challenge, which is the high level of infrastructure investment that is required. So a couple of examples that come to mind is the investment in the ships that will transport hydrogen in one of the vectors, whether it's ammonia or liquefied hydrogen, the export terminals, then the import terminals, the transmission network, and all of the other infrastructure that is really required to get the hydrogen in whatever form to the end user, and then the conversion of those end user appliances. So really a lot of infrastructure investment, which again goes to that point of the key role that the government has to play by providing sustained policy backing in the region. So that is developing, but it's still key to make the adoption of hydrogen economical as regards to production, storage, transportation, and delivery. So in other words, the whole value chain. Now, we are seeing very encouraging signs. So the increasing number of net zero emissions across Asia Pacific is really encouraging a growing demand for decarbonized products, such as green hydrogen and ammonia, with really notable developments around the 2030 time mark. This creates opportunities for early mover projects in support with supportive government, of course, to develop at pace. Maybe to point out one specific opportunity here in this region is green steel. So green hydrogen, as I mentioned in the previous comment, is proving itself as one of the most promising routes to decarbonizing steel. And given the very high intensity of steel production in North Asia, this we believe is a big area that is worth exploring. And as a matter of fact, other industry players are looking at the exact same opportunity, which is really encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I got another question, and may I invite Dr. Liang to address this question. Blue hydrogen is considered by some of the most cost-effective clean hydrogen in the utilization of CCUS. While there seems to be some controversy around this technology, what's your view on it?
Blue hydrogen, I think, is one of the mechanisms to address hydrogen supply while also maintain the sustainability. And I think that the green hydrogen is currently very popular because green hydrogen comes from renewable sources and the carbon footprint is obviously quite low. But I think even green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, they all have downside. Like green hydrogen, if you use solar PV to generate hydrogen, then you need to take a lot of land, and considering the CO2 the hydrogen storage and transportation issue, which could be quite tough. For blue hydrogen, it requires fossil fuel like methane or coal to convert it into hydrogen, and then we have to adopt a CO2 capture, transportation, and storage process to mitigate the CO2 coming from the hydrogen production process. I think hydrogen production process is quite mature in the refinery sector, using either methane or coal to generate hydrogen. So in the long term, I think blue hydrogen, if the life cycle carbon emission and life cycle environment impact can be minimized, I personally believe is still a durable options for generating hydrogen. And in particular, you can select a site where CO2 storage is favorable to develop the hydrogen production plant and also hydrogen using plant. And I think we need to set up a standard for blue hydrogen, and for example, what kind of carbon capture ratio is needed, or whether in the long term you need to use biomass mixed with a fossil fuel to achieve negative emission in hydrogen production. So all these issues still are uncertain and need to be discussed and work out a model.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Liang.
Yeah, thanks, Winnie.
We now have time for one more question. I would like to invite Dr. Huang to address this question. What advice would you offer to those making investment in the hydrogen market? Are there any unique aspects or characteristics that need to be evaluated?
From my point of view, the hydrogen industry is still seeing shortfalls in technology, mechanisms, funds, infrastructure, etc. In the long run, successful scale application will require more systematic policies, more technology innovation, better use cases, and more feasible business models. From a private equities perspective, we think that more attention should be given to opportunities arising from key materials, technological improvement, and economy of scale. That's all, Ms. Fan.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. I also want to thank all the panelists for leading us a fresh perspective on today's topic. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I do. Climate change and global warming have gained tremendous attention globally. Energy transition plays a vital role in preventing global warming and to reach net zero in 2050. Clean hydrogen and CCUS are very promising green technology in energy transition, but still in early stage of the commercialization. We hope with the government support, technology advancement, and the funding from the financial institutions, scaling the application of hydrogen and CCUS will be in the future. Cheers to a more sustainable future. Thanks everyone for your participation. Thank you.